grow food. And, you know, that's often part of the dominant narrative too, right? All the barriers to engaging in agriculture and farming. And, you know, for our next speaker, Dr. Susan Crow, I think a lot of her work, you know, looks to leverage the science and the research, right, to help lower some of those barriers and provide that direct, right, support and resources to farmers that can allow them to overcome some of those reasons of why some people don't grow food. And so, yes, very, very pleased to introduce Dr. Susan Crow, soil scientist extraordinaire and a huge advocate for our soil health and farmers here in Hawaii. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Daniela and Noah. Let me get my screen share going here. All right, I trust you will let me know if there's any problems. Mahalo, aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to join this group. This is my first time with you folks. And hopefully I can talk a little bit today about a big project that we're standing up now that ideally will help you realize some of the aspirational goals for systemic transformational food system change. So the title of my speech, I love it, speech, I'm giving a speech, we're doing it, Assisting Hawaii Farmers with Climate Smart Practices. And so I'll talk a little bit about the mechanism for that assistance, what it means to be climate smart, and what some of those practices are. So it's impossible for me at this point to give recognition to all of the people who have contributed to this. So I hope that you'll find this entire slide deck to be one of affirmation of all the partnerships and collaborations that led to the point where we were able to bring this mechanism to Hawaii. And so I always like to start with a little bit of a project history. So it really tells a story of how we came together and how our ideas came together in order to manifest a $40 million award coming to Hawaii to support Hawaii's farmers and protect our climate. And so part of the history is in artificial intelligence, which is not something that I do at all. And we don't always think about this, but it brought together an incredible team of people to think about how Indigenous values and food systems and soil health could be brought together to inform artificial intelligence. And so the list of names here is an incredible one. And the idea and the vision of it was that the next phase of modern agriculture must re-envision how humans interact with nature to provide societal needs without degrading the land and really re-perpetuating abundance in Hawaii's landscapes and communities. And so from that ultimately unsuccessful grant came out this seed of an idea and an incredible collaboration that led directly into the work that I'll talk more about. And so at the same time, we were dipping our toes into that policy realm, mainly because I had some of those same questions. So fantastic questions about like, how are people even thinking about agriculture with the collapse of the large scale plantations? It just like in the policy realm just was mystifying to me. And so my approach was to dabble in it a bit and found a home for our work in the Natural and Working Lands Research Team of the U.S. Climate Alliance. In the absence of federal leadership, we had state leadership who cared deeply about ensuring that we met climate goals and how that could center in working lands or agricultural lands, as well as our protecting our biodiverse pristine forests. And through that, we did some work to really dig into policy mechanisms that can go against what Daniela just described. And then centering back on our CTAHR-based Hawaii Soil Health Research, who is an incredible team of people, including Jonathan Dienick and Dr. Ty Maas, who you folks probably know, who are really working to already define soil health specifically for Hawaii, for our soils and systems, and building out a network of producers with ongoing trials. And so when the opportunity to apply for this big project came, we were able to pull very quickly and respond very rapidly, pull together this incredible team of people. Here are some names. It is not inclusive, but these are some major players And so we have a project in hand funded at $40 million, and we're really excited to stand that up and roll it out over the coming years. It's 5 to 7 years. And so we have the opportunity to develop a portfolio approach to equitably scaling the agricultural sector. We have major partners. We have a producer engagement team with producer organizations who allowed us to very quickly represent producer voices from across the state via those established relationships and networks. And then, of course, mahalo to the 62 plus producers and practitioners who came in at the proposal stage to help stand this up. The foundations of this grant are to overcome implementation barriers that Noah mentioned through investments and direct incentive payments. So it's a voluntary incentive program. We'll build decision support tools for verification and monitoring, improve technical assistance through a network of community-based organizations, and most importantly, for the sustainability of this beyond the end of the project, will generate internal momentum for a market-based sustainable food system. We can talk a little bit more about what market that is. But ultimately, the aspiration is to rebuild health, resilience, and abundance in landscapes and communities throughout Hawaii. And so the next part of this is, what is climate smart agriculture even? There are 3 main goals from an international perspective. This is a concept that's been built out as increasing productivity, so sustainable intensification of agriculture, enhanced resilience, so that's kind of the adaptation of coming change associated with a warmer climate. And then the third component is reduced emissions, so sequestering carbon and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's not just one component, it's not carbon, it's all 3 of these legs. And this is the part that we can really wrap our heads around here in Hawaii. And so if you think about what that means here in Hawaii, not just from an international perspective, those 3 goals can be viewed as increased local productivity with sustainable practices, enhanced resilience through soil health, which is a foundation of climate smart agriculture for us here in Hawaii, and meaningful system level climate benefits. And that's food system, life cycle analysis, the whole 9 yards, not just carbon and greenhouse gases, but we can measure this in units of radiative forcing to take the idea away from carbon as a commodity and another resource that can be exported. And so this is why this is the approach we'll take and build out over the coming years. So this is all predicated on our previous work, developing a soil health test and index specific to our systems here in Hawaii. It started with a soil survey of our islands and systems, a proposition of potential indicators, and then a novel approach by Ty Maas and the group to develop an index that works specifically for us and hopefully can be transferred to other islands and other Pacific area and volcanic systems as well. And so that's kind of where we're at. And then when you take a look at the database that we've already generated for us here in Hawaii, we have almost 1,000 samples already in the database, and you can see across conventional cropland, organic cropland, pastures, treed systems, and U-pile are those unmanaged previous intensive agricultural lands. We have a wide range of soil health index, high, low, and everything in between. And so we're feeling good that we have a good premise for assessing that resilience via these metrics of soil health for us here in Hawaii. And our system allows us to provide equity across our soils and systems, and that carries over into our communities and who we're serving here in Hawaii with this mechanism, this funding mechanism. And so we've already started some of this work on equity and Indigenous innovation through those previous collaborations. With the U.S. Climate Alliance, we did a barriers assessment, which looks over the course of, or the outcome of that was identifying persistent and complex factors across land, education, and training and resources that interweave and result in people unable and sometimes unwilling for good reason to access resources that may become available. And so part of what we will address is how to make resources more accessible to people. If a resource exists, but people don't want it or can't access it, then it may not exist. And so that's one of the things we'll continue to do. Destiny Apilado has already got a head start on this. She's a Master's of Environmental Management student working through the Haole Maloa Fellowship and Foundation, and she's already beginning to test this idea of even definitions of what underserved producers, what that word even means. The federal government has a definition. What does that mean for us here in Hawaii? And then we have a phase one kind of rollout of projects that are already well developed. Much more interesting is our phase two, where we take the time that's required to create a process for governance and develop out an RFP that will restore Indigenous practice, create equitable regeneration within the community with experts and researchers as allies in doing so. And we do that through a patient and trust building community engagement equity process. And so that's also built in and coming over the next few years. And so the phase one projects are kind of ready to go on the ground. And so what are those practices? You'll recognize many of these. You'll recognize all of these, actually. These are standard current practices that fall under the category of climate smart, soil carbon amendment, building composting facilities, mulching, cover crop, conservation cover. These are all practices that our farmers, our producers, our foresters were willing and ready to say, okay, I can make this work for me. Let's get it on the ground and build a project. And we have 66 different projects that are already ready to go. And you can see this incredible list of products. And that's all in our phase one, which are kind of right at the beginning, right at the upstart. Much more interesting, though, is this phase two and how we're going to roll this out over time. So there's current NRCS practices, and that's phase 1A. Those are the ones where no issues here, good to go. I'm ready to access these funds. Let's do it. Phase 1B will take a little bit more time. Okay, still good to go. I can access these funds. We need a little bit of place-based clarification here before we can go, but we're going to do it. Okay, then we'll move into where we're actually affecting change within practices. Okay, these practices are not appropriate. They're not acceptable. We're not ready to say good to go here. Let's work together over the next approximately a year to think about how we need to modify those standard practices to make it work. Okay, follow on to that in the coming years, we can build out brand new practices that are Hawaii-based. If NRCS doesn't accept it at the federal level, then that's where we can really tap into our state resources to make sure that those practices are recognized and supported here. And so that entire process is built out throughout the course of the planned activities. And so our goals beyond the climate action and improved bottom line for producers, transformational shifts towards the circular economy, taking what might be a waste stream and recapturing those nutrients and making sure that it doesn't go into a landfill, it doesn't go into our coastal systems, and instead stays on the landscape to help rebuild health and resilience in our farming systems, lower dependence on fossil-based imports, improve local food systems. Institutional change, we're doing this. We've got this opportunity. This is it, one-off. It's a huge opportunity. That is absolutely our commitment to make those institutional changes that are required, and ultimately to sustain beyond the end of the funding cycle. We'll build a trained workforce, build up inclusive decision support tools, and hopefully have a diverse market system ready to help continue to produce farmers in place and ready to continue supporting our farmers and producers and practitioners into the future. So leave it there. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I just think what you guys are doing is a great model for how we can leverage research programs, not just to inform or support